Hey, welcome back. My name is Jay Joseph. I teach, mentor, and coach people on public speaking so that they can give winning high stakes speech, whether it's for a job interview, a business meeting, or even at a conference. Today, I want to focus on negotiation. And what I'm going to cover is the result of the meeting that Jim Comey, the former FBI director, had with Donald Trump, the private meeting in the green room in the White House. And in the meeting, Trump asked him that he needs loyalty. Okay, that's the backdrop. How would you handle that? So before I get into that, let's just look at what's going on here, because you need to understand this. Every interaction with somebody powerful is a negotiation game. I believe every interaction is a negotiation game, but especially when somebody is asking you and things are looking like, wait a second, something is not right. What's going on here? You are negotiating about something. Now, you can get as much information as you want, and I'm sure that Comey was well prepared, knew exactly what to expect, but still, he was taken back. So, any negotiation, the other side is going to throw something at you that you just cannot prepare. So, how do you handle that? That's what it comes down to. That's what this video I'm going to focus on. How do you handle things that you just cannot possibly prepare? It's almost like they're hitting you by 2x4 and you don't know what to do. How do you react to that? And the way you react to that is very important because it's going to happen to you in any situation you go to. They'll throw something at you that you just cannot possibly prepare, whether it's for a job interview, a meeting, or even some kind of question that somebody may ask you at a conference Q&A. Okay, the question that Jim Comey didn't handle well was when Trump brought loyalty. He's changing the game. I believe Comey probably, maybe he didn't know what that meeting was about. Trump was using that meeting as a negotiation. He wanted to negotiate loyalty. Comey doesn't negotiate loyalty. You don't negotiate loyalty. He's a public servant. Loyalty is something, it's the oath. That's the loyalty. And he's already negotiated that. You don't negotiate loyalty to individuals. He's taken back. Trump hits him by 2x4. I need loyalty. And he kind of answered it according to his record, but it wasn't a really good answer. So I want to use that and show you, now that I've had time and I've run into this and I've given a lot of thought to this, what should Jim Comey have done and how you can use it in a similar situation if you're ever in a negotiation situation. And like I said, in a job, in a meeting, there is negotiation. And when somebody brings up stuff that is way out of line, what do? Okay, so he brings up loyalty. The first thing that Jim Comey should have done was, number one, define loyalty. Put it on the other person. Hey, pretend dumb. Don't act smart. One of the biggest part of negotiation thing you have to remember is don't be smarter than the other person. Don't let him think like you're smart. Let him think you're smart, but you got to pretend dumb. Saying, oh, can you please define loyalty? What do you mean by loyalty? Can you define it? I just want to make sure I understand it. Okay, pretend dumb. And if he says, well, don't you know what loyalty is? I may, but I want to make sure how you know it, because we may have a totally different definition. And if he says, how do you define loyalty? I didn't bring it up, so I'm going to have you define it, because I didn't bring up the word. So never define it. Even if he tries, well, why don't you define it? I said, no, I didn't bring it up. So I think the burden is on you to define it. And if the person doesn't define loyalty, then move away. The meeting is, at that point, the meeting essentially is over. So let me just point that out. When somebody brings up stuff that is way outside the line, at that point, you're in a bailout phase. You got to end the meeting because they are now trapping you and you cannot be trapped. But what you do is don't run away. Get as much information as possible. So the way you want to end it is, I need to think about it. Let me think about it and get back to you. Buy time. That's what you want to do. Your escape plan is to escape. And what you want is you need time. because you brought up something that I hadn't thought about, and I need to think about that. Okay? Never make a decision, don't say anything. But what you need is get as much information as possible. First thing, as I just said, was get him to define loyalty. Okay? Second is, hey, since you're the one who brought it up, give me an example of what you consider as a good loyalty. Somebody who's loyal to you. Give me an example of that. So now you're putting him on the spot. Okay? I want you specifically, get him specific. Define a person. First you define it. Give me an example of somebody that is loyal to you so I know what you mean. So I can say, oh, that person, that's loyalty, the way you understand it. Okay? Third, how are you going to measure loyalty? Okay? How do you measure loyalty? It's an abstract term. I need to know. What if I want to be loyal? How are you going to measure it so I know exactly what the measurement is? You're my boss, and you're telling me you want me to be loyal. Well, I need to know how you're going to measure it. Otherwise, I might do something and you might say, hey, I might think I'm loyal, but then you might think I'm not loyal, and you're going to get rid of me. Okay? So that's the third thing. All right. The fourth thing is, what kind of loyalty are you expecting from me? I got now your definition. I got an example. I know how you're going to measure it. How are you going to measure me? That this is what I'm doing. So I know what loyalty you're expecting specifically from me. Because everybody's loyalty is different, right? The common loyalty we have when you work in the government is the loyalty is to the Constitution, to the people, and to the country, right? That's the loyalty pledge you take when you get sworn in. But in this case, the person has brought up something that's way out of the line. Okay, what exactly are you expecting from me so that I know what kind of loyalty that I need to abide by? Okay, the last question is, and what if you think I'm not loyal? What are you going to do? Get the person to nail them down on those 5 questions. Now, one thing I got to make it clear. This is something you got to prepare ahead of time. This is something that could come up anytime, and you immediately fall into, I call it the escape hatch. But before you escape, get as much information. You don't want to just escape right away and say, the meeting's over, I'm done. You don't want to do that. You want to be professional. Like you got to make the person comfortable. Like, hey, this is interesting. I never thought about it. Let me make sure I understand it, because I might give them hope. That's what you're trying to do. Give them hope that what they're bringing up, you might be able to satisfy them. Okay? But then don't give it to them. You then exit and say, I need some time to think about it, and let me get back to you. Okay? And that is how you handle in any negotiation when people bring up stuff that you just had never thought would even come up. And you got to role play this. Because when you deal with people in power, they have a tendency to do that. They have a tendency to trap you. And if you're not careful, you need to get as much information and then make the decision. But as soon as because negotiation is one thing. If you're both at an equal level and you know exactly the parameters, and there's anything that somebody's going to bring up, then you can negotiate. But when somebody suddenly brings up something that you hadn't even thought about, like what does that have to do with it? At that point, you can't negotiate. That negotiation session is over. You just now have to get as much information as possible so that you can decide what to do. But at that point, you're done. The negotiation at that point is done. You now have to move into a phase to make the person comfortable, get as much information, and buy time. That's what you're doing. And as you saw, Jim Comey, for how good he is, didn't know how to handle that situation. Because people like Donald Trump like to dominate. And when they dominate, they look at only one thing. I win, you lose. He doesn't even care about the loyalty that people have to take when they take these offices. He even took office, and he doesn't care about the loyalty that he took to be the president. And he's expecting the people who are working for him to be loyal to him. And that's just completely unacceptable. But you don't want to lose your temper. You don't want to say anything. At that point, you realize that, okay, I know what the game is. Let me now show the person how that game is really played. Think about this. This is a very important point I'm just making here. Because if you're not prepared for this, you're going to give up power very quickly. The power is gone. And you want to make sure that that person feels comfortable that, hey, there is a possibility you might give them what they want, but you're not. But you don't want to let them know that in the meeting. The meeting is all about you get the information and then make the decision. But you got to know how to handle this. This is a very important part of negotiation, especially when there's a power imbalance. Okay, think about it. Let me know if you have any comments, suggestions, questions, or any ideas on how you would handle that. And as always, thank you for watching, and good luck with this type of negotiation in the future.